TSA agents who have been working without pay since mid-February. It has been impacting lines. It has been impacting delays. Some people reporting multi-hour journeys to get through the TSA checkpoint maze because, in no small part, many TSA workers are calling out as they've been working without pay for quite some time now. Recently, ICE agents have been deployed to airports around the country, including Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson. The border czar, Tom Homan, he told CNN just a few days ago on Sunday that ICE agents are there, and this is a quote of his, to help TSA do their job in areas that don't need their specialized expertise, such as screening through the X-ray machine. But for some people, the presence of ICE has also raised some questions and some alarm at their presence in the airports. And Homan, in that interview with CNN on Sunday, when asked about the possibility of arrests being made at airports, he said this, quote, "We do immigration enforcement at airports all the time. Is that going to change? It's not going to change." So, to help make sense of this ongoing situation at the airports, we are joined now by Jamene Christian, an immigration attorney. You've been practicing immigration law for well over a decade here in Atlanta. Joining us in studio, Jamene, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Zach.
I think a good place to start is this. What are your clients telling you about this new presence, or at least more publicly visible presence of ICE at Atlanta's airport?
Absolutely. As a private practice immigration attorney and as a JustAnswer.com legal expert, I have been receiving an uptick in questions coming in asking, can I go to the airport? Should I go to the airport? Should I cancel my trip? And the odd thing is, normally when you're talking about immigration law, you're talking about undocumented people or people looking to adjust or change their status. But I have U.S. citizens reaching out asking, is it safe to travel? And that's a whole different world that we've never experienced before.
Immigration law, you don't need me to tell you this, it is a reasonably complicated branch of the U.S. legal system. You tee up a question I want to ask you, and I suspect some people who are watching may be wondering as well. What different rights do people have if they're approached by an ICE agent at the airport, depending on whether they're a U.S. citizen or a visa holder or a green card holder?
Absolutely. Nice distinction there, Zach. If you're a U.S. citizen, you do not have to travel with your passport. You have every right to come and go, domestically especially. So if you're approached by an ICE officer as a U.S. citizen, you can always decline the interaction. But I'm a U.S. citizen. If I'm going to travel domestically, I'm definitely traveling with my passport just to de-escalate, go on about my business. If I'm a green card holder, as a green card holder under Immigration Nationality Act, you are required to have your documentation with you at all times. So I would strongly suggest, even if you're traveling domestically in this new era, that you absolutely carry your green card with you. If an ICE agent is to approach you, show your green card and go on about your business. If you are a visa holder, your visa should be in your passport. So if you're Jamaican, Russian, that visa stamp will be in your passport. If it's valid, you simply display it to the ICE officer and you can go on your way. But I just want to add that
Please.
In March of last year, ICE, they were deployed to the airports, but it was targeted. So TSA would share information with ICE. ICE would see that someone was undocumented or removable from the country. They would show up because they had the name, the gate, the flight, and they would wait for that person to go through a TSA, arrive at the gate, and then bring them into custody. This is new because this is not targeted. This is random. So I understand the fear that people are having because they don't know if they're going to be approached.
And let's talk about that a little bit more, because it seems, as I've been following this news and this conversation, that it's taken on some different forms. And those quotes we read from Tom Homan encapsulated that as we led into this segment. On one level, the administration and immigration enforcement leaders have been talking about the main focus isn't on immigration enforcement for these ICE agents at these airports. It's to assist and alleviate some of these long lines. But Border Czar Tom Homan also said that the arrest powers don't go away at the airport. Are you seeing that play out sort of in that order of priorities, or are clients telling you that they feel like there has been a ramp up of enforcement efforts and arrests?
Okay, so we know that they rolled out on Monday. And on Monday, we heard reports of ICE agents scrolling through their phones, drinking Starbucks coffee, and just more or less standing at gates and entries and exits and not doing anything.
And it's not something they usually do, too, right?
No,
this is a different
not
job.
Domestically. You do not see ICE at domestic airports. Again, unless they're there to targeted pick up someone. So are they helping now? I understand on today, Wednesday at Atlanta Hartsfield that they are helping the screeners. So they are looking at driver's licenses and they're looking at passports while the TSA agent is right there. So it's as if TSA is training ICE. So that's when you can have a problem, because if you have an ICE officer looking at your documentation, it can escalate.
And you talked about in previous iterations of this, there were more of a targeted focus for immigration enforcement efforts at airports. The New York Times reports that on Sunday, ICE arrested a woman at San Francisco's airport, Angelina Lopez Jimenez, and as the New York Times reported it, she was flagged by TSA to ICE as a passenger that TSA believed had been ordered out of the country by a judge. I see you nodding your head here. Is that a common way that these things play out?
Yes, that is your targeted ICE showing up at the airport. And I'm kind of familiar with that story. That happened in San Francisco. It happened Sunday prior to ICE arriving on Monday at the 14 airports. So they had information. Information was shared from TSA to ICE. She entered the country in 2018. She appeared at her various ICE check-in, and she just stopped appearing. So a removal order was issued in absentia without her being there. So when when they shared the information with TSA, they shared the list. So they have your name, they have your date of birth, where you're traveling to, and they will show up at the airport. So she was taken into custody, and within 36 hours, she was back in Guatemala with her 9-year-old daughter, who was also undocumented.
You in that answer, and we started this conversation, relayed some of the concerns that clients have voiced to you, some of the apprehension that they've voiced feeling when they go to the airport, the world's busiest, right? Here in Atlanta. It gets a lot of traffic, right? One of the other components of this conversation, though, and I know some people watching will be thinking about this, when you are in the country, it's your obligation, if you're coming from somewhere else in the world, to make sure that your paperwork is in order, you're here lawfully. What advice, what message would you have to folks who are maybe balancing those two things, where you have some apprehension about going to the airport, you also have this obligation to make sure that your paperwork is in order?
Well, I would say this, in this new ICE age, pardon the pun, if you're not documented, stay away from the airport. And I know it might sound harsh, people rely on travel to go see family members, but if you are out of status, if you're undocumented, that's something that should be taken up in immigration court. And if you can normalize your status, and there are many ways you can normalize your status, even if you enter the country unlawfully. If you marry a U.S. citizen, all of that is waived. Your illegal entry, working without authorization. So because you're here undocumented, it's not an end story to your immigration journey. So if you cannot find a way to normalize your immigration status, it is best advised to not travel.
Let me ask you about this. Let's expand the scope of this conversation a little bit, because we've focused on immigration enforcement efforts and at the airports, and that's of course a big focus right now. But your practice, you do a lot of work in naturalization and normalization, maybe is the term now, but of people who are coming to the United States and want to get all their paperwork in order, do it the right way, dot all the I's, cross all the T's. Has that process changed in recent years under the current administration?
Well, no. There's a push for that to change. We know that the naturalization test has become more difficult. So if you're here and you're looking to become a naturalized citizen, first you have to be here for, if you're married to a U.S. citizen, a minimum of 3 years as a green card holder, 5 years if you came in another way and got your green card status. But it's still this basic journey. You file the paperwork, you have no issues, no red flag issues that would get you denied, and that could be criminal convictions since arriving, because you have to have good moral character, right? So that journey is still the same. What is more difficult is the screening process, because I'm going to get into a deep dive with immigration law. There's a 75 country pause. in terms of immigration. So if you're coming from one of those 75 countries, and if you attempt to naturalize, that is put on pause, and your application will be held until the legal system decides that that pause is lifted.
We're extremely short on time. In 10 seconds, I don't want to leave before we ask you this question. If
Okay.
somebody has a question and they need some legal guidance, what can they do? Where can they go to get some answers?
Well, great online resources, JustAnswer.com. You go on there, it's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Do it in the privacy of your own home. You can be undocumented, ask your questions, and there's a verified legal expert to answer your question.
That was good. I said 10 seconds, and you were right on the money. The mark of a good attorney is always hitting the deadlines. Jamene Christian, thank you very much for being here, for your perspective. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Zach.